Gospel 88.7 and 100.3 FM WEHA.
And welcome to In the Key of G with Bishop John Gandy. And this is a special Friday edition. Of course, we're normally on Thursdays, every third Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. But we are doing a special series of programs working toward our election. And so I'm going to do on every Thursday between now and November the 7th, I think the election is, right? So I'm doing every Thursday. We'll be talking about the election. We're going to be talking about, really, from a Christian perspective, how should we think about the election for those who are participating. Of course, I know some of us do not participate in the electoral process, but those of us who do, how should we approach this election? How should we think about this election? And I have a real passion about this election. I'm not really a political person. I like to share information about public policy and that sort of thing, but this particular election is, I think, the most crucial election that we've ever seen in our lifetime, for sure, and very possibly the most crucial election that this country has seen in 100 years, 100 or better. So we're going to talk about it, and today I've got a guest on with me in studio today. He's going to share some information that I think you're going to find very fruitful, very helpful to help you to navigate how to think about your interest in this election. And I want you, if you would, to share this program with your friends. Do like it. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to call in 609-641-8870. And if you have comments, place them online, and we will be checking online, and we'll be engaging you online as well. Thank you. Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Sister Mother Walton. God bless you. Good to see you there. All right, so my guest today, I'm excited to have with me Dr. Arthur Garrison. He is an author. He is a college professor. He is a national speaker, and we're happy to have him on with us today. Dr. Garrison, how are you, sir?
Doing fine, Bishop. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you on, man. And I want to get right into it because in our conversations that we've had about the election, that we've talked on the phone a couple of times, and the information that you've shared is so interesting and so rich. I want to give as much time as we can for you to share. Well, before we do that, why don't you take a minute and just kind of introduce yourself, let people know who you are, your background, your experience, and that kind of thing, and how you've got to where you are today.
Thank you for having me. As I said, my name is Arthur Garrison, and I'm a professor of criminal justice at Kutztown University. And I've written a series of books on criminal justice history, Chained to the System, Race and Criminal Justice History, and I am currently working on 2 books discussing the history of American politics, and with a specific emphasis on the rhetoric of our politics and how we got to where we are in the age of Trump. Mm-hmm. There is a historical context to that, and my most recent writings go into how that started with Jefferson and with Franklin, going to John Calhoun and the Civil War, leading to Strom Thurmond and George Wallace and Goldwater and Nixon and Reagan, moving into Buchanan, into Gingrich, the rise of Obama as president of the United States, the Tea Party reaction, the Tea Party purging of the Republican Party, which all created the foundation and the road that Trump got on, and he just dominated all the other cars, as we saw when he ran for president and then became president. And then when the coalition that supported Obama threw Trump out of office, that's where January 6th is. And so a lot of my most recent writings is showing the historical foundational development of how we got to Trump and Trumpism, because although Trump did not invent Trumpism, the foundation of it dates back at least a century to a century and a half.
Okay, and I want to get into all of that, the history and of course where we are today. But before we go there, let's talk about Arthur Garrison.
Okay. Well, like I said, I originally was raised in Bronx, New York, by my Jamaican Christian mother, and she was a Jamaican Christian mother of the old ways.
Okay, well, she was really a Jamaican Christian mother.
Yes, of the old ways, and so she had a belt there that had no other purpose but to apply proverbs when necessary, and so I grew up in New York City, and when I graduated high school, I was told, you're going to college, but where you go is up to you, and so I didn't like the city anymore. So I wanted grass, trees, squirrels, space. And so I went to Kutztown and got my degree in political science with a minor in history. And then I got my master's degree at Westchester University in criminal justice. And then I started working in Delaware as a pre-sentence investigation officer, and then as a grant and policy administrator for the state. Stayed there for a while, and then finished and got my doctoral degree, and then went on to teaching. One of the things to know about me is also, outside of the criminal justice policy and everything, I've also written 2 books in Christian living. And the first book is Lord Help My Unbelief, where I go through the stories of the Bible from a point of view as how the people in the Bible actually walked through their fears and walked through the growth of their faith as an example that we can have. And the part of the book is to give encouragement that God hears and God sees us as we go through life. We're not invisible to the eyes and the hands of God. And so Lord Help My Unbelief is a Christian book designed to, not only for Christians, but for anybody, but specifically with a Christian perspective, no doubt about it, that the Bible is true, and that through the stories of the Bible, we can be encouraged to live this life in happiness and in peace and in security. Sure. And the other book goes into, I look at justice defined by the hand of God. So I look through all the Bible and the stories of what justice is, and justice actually has a meaning. And you can find the meaning of justice through the scriptures. And so that book, I Am the God Who Sees, I go over that in detail. So I handle both Christian issues and criminal justice policy issues in my public speaking, as well as I also teach.
Very good. So that's good. So I would like, of course, this is a Christian station, and I'm a pastor, and so I'm approaching this election thing, taking into consideration many Christians, some Christians do not necessarily engage in politics, or as what they may consider to be politics. Some don't vote. Some vote, but they vote based upon their values and morals and conservative values and so forth. And sometimes those those values will, I was on the radio for a lot of years, right? When I did one program years ago, and I had a co-host, and this program was we had different views. And he would often ask me, he says, well, what are you? Are you liberal or are you conservative? Are you Republican or Democrat? Because sometimes you take this position and sometimes you take that position. And my answer to him is always, I am neither and both. We seek righteousness, right? We seek what is the right thing, what is the biblically correct way to view it, and we take that perspective. And not everybody has that thing. Some people are trying to figure out, how should I approach voting for a candidate? Because if one is conservative, and I look at another one who has these other values, liberal values that are inconsistent with my faith, although the conservative candidate may have some other issues, how do I weigh this?
Right.
And what I'm saying, and that's something that people, of course, go through and have to navigate. But my thinking is, with this particular election, I'm suggesting to people that, first of all, I can make a biblical case for, to answer those questions. But the more important issue is what I'm trying to hammer home is that this election, and from my perspective, is like none other for us at this hour. So help us to navigate through that. You have a Christian background, you have a biblical perspective, and you have the perspective of a learned, educated professor of government and those kinds of issues. Help us to navigate through these waters.
I would say, Bishop, that on one level, I'm talking about our people. On one level, my answer to the thing is, okay, start with you have to vote. Now, who you vote for is a different conversation. You have to vote. And the reason I would say that is simply because too many people were arrested, shot, killed, beaten, and otherwise abused for the right for us to have a vote. So, on one level, we have a moral obligation to vote irrespective of who to vote for. To begin with, that's how I think, talking about our people, how we should look at it, because we were not born with the assumption that we could vote and then we argue about to vote for who. We had to fight, claw to have the right to vote, and it's not that young, it's only 50 years old. That said, the thing is, our people are socially conservative by design, but our view of what social conservative is different than what our white Christian social conservative is. They're not the same thing.
They're not the same.
So when we talk about we are socially conservative, that's not a term of art. Term of art is like mens rea. Mens rea has a particular meaning, and no matter where you are on the spectrum of life, it only has one meaning. Social conservative is not a term of art. It's a description. And black people, socially conservative, is different than white people, social conservative, when we're talking about it in the political landscape. So the first thing is to make sure you're not talking about the same thing. That said, we should always have a Christian biblical perspective. But this is something that was brought to my attention, and I've been working it through my head, and I think it makes some sense, is that when our Lord Jesus came down and walked on the earth, he came to straighten out his people, not Rome. There's a distinction. When he said, if you take all the things that Jesus said, and let's say you build that into a moral code that you do this and not do that and that and this, and you don't support this, but you don't support that. Okay, however that math comes out to you. Okay, fine. But he was not talking to the Roman emperor. He was talking to his people. And, and if we abstract out to what his people means after he comes out of the ground and what that means, Christians, he was talking to his church. That is, you should not do this. So when I think about my Christian code about what I will and will not do, that's different than what the government will and will not do, or what the government will or will not allow. And there's a distinction. And I think one of the things that separates us from our white Christian brothers is they don't make that distinction. They think whatever their moral code is, that's what the government's moral code should be.
I want to dig a little bit in that area. So we're going to come back to that. We have a caller on the line. I want to take this caller.
Okay.
Caller, are you there?
I am here.
Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, how are you, sir?
What's going on?
All right, Pastor. You good, man?
I am good, man.
Pastor Marvin
It's
Graham.
good to hear you guys cutting it up over there, man.
Yeah. Did you have a question or comment for our guest?
I just want to say, Dr. Garrison, you're bringing out some good points, and I would just like to ask, what do you think about this election?
There's a lot there, Pastor. I will say this. I don't view this election as an election about policy disagreements. That's not what this election is. This election is not about tax cuts versus not tax cuts. This election is not about, it's not even about Supreme Court nominees one way or the other. This election is about what America is and what we say our government is, and the equivalent would be 1860 and 1865. The United States would not exist if those elections had gone the other way. If Lincoln lost in 1860, there would be no United States. If Lincoln lost in 1865, there would be no United States. There'd be the United States and the Confederate of the United States, and all of American and world history would be different. I'm beginning to see this election along those same lines because Trump represents Trump represents not the best of what America is. Trump represents, how should I say this? Trump represents, let's put it this way, Trump represents not the best of what we say. In other words, politics can be on the high level and can be on the gutter level. Trump has elevated gutter level politics into the presidency. There's certain things that should not come out of a president's mouth because he's president. That's all there is to it. Because when the founding fathers created the presidency, they were looking at Washington. Washington had the power to become king, and he didn't. Now, today, 200 and change years later, we're not as impressed as we should be. Because back in his time, generals that won major battles, major wars, with a fully armed, battle-tested, hard army, ruled. Washington walked back into Philadelphia, handed his command of the the Revolutionary Army back to the Continental Congress, said thank you very much, and as far as he was concerned, he was going to go back to Virginia and live happy for the rest of his life. It was unheard of in his time. When they designed the Constitution and thought about the presidency, they were looking at Washington. That's what the presidency is, and every president after that has to live up to the position of president. I think Trump thinks that the presidency has to live up to him. I don't think he thinks he's bigger. I think he thinks he's bigger than the presidency. Every other president, no matter what you thought about them, all knew the presidency was bigger than they were. They had to fit into it. Trump, I think, has a different mindset. Trump voters represent a strain of politics and a strain of political history that we thought we had finished with in the 60s.
Does that answer your question, Pastor?
that was excellent. That was excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for calling, sir, and we appreciate you.
No, appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir. You're listening to In the Key of G with Bishop John Gandy. My guest is Dr. Arthur Garrison. He is a professor at Kutztown University. He's an author, and he is a national speaker. And we're happy to have him on with us today. If you have a question or comment, feel free to give us a call at 609-641-8870. And, of course, if you have a question or comment on Facebook, please post it, and we will certainly be checking in. All right, we're going to take a quick break right here. We're going to take about a 2-minute break and come back and continue with Dr. Garrison. Hang in there.
Deacon William Hawks, a.k.a. El Presidente, cordially invites you to attend the Elaine Lady Praise Hawks 60th Birthday Gospel Music Celebration Service with special guests and artists Priscilla Hawks, First Lady Patricia Gandy, gospel duo Duncan and Rochelle with United Gospel Singers, the new John Howard Gospel Caravans featuring Bishop Charles R. Lyles, Minister Thomas Jennings, and the Inspirational Choral Ensemble, Friends of WEHA Anniversary Singers, directed by Pastor Bubby Fan, and other special tributes. Praise and worship by Abundant Life New Vision Praise Team, hosted by Thelma Witherspoon and Minister John Howard. All taking place Saturday, October 12th at Faith Baptist Church, 829 Tilton Road, Pleasantville, New Jersey. Doors open at 4 p.m. for pictures with Lady Praise. Program starts at 5 p.m. Admission is free. There will be a free will birthday love offering. Come celebrate Elaine Lady Praise Hawks at her 60th birthday gospel music celebration service.
Hawks, a name that has been trusted for almost 30 years in the janitorial services industry, is proud to present Hawks Professional Moving Services, fully insured, local and long distance, packing services, commercial and residential, no job too small or too large, friendly and reliable services. For more information or a free estimate, 609-484-0452. Hawks Professional Moving Services, where we treat your belongings like our own.
Do you have an event coming up and need a facility? Well, let me tell you about Atlantic County's newest banquet facility, Beacon Hall, located in the heart of Egg Harbor City, right off the Whitehorse Pike. Beacon Hall is a full-service banquet facility that is 5,000 square feet with an attached parking lot. Book your conferences, book signings, birthday parties, bridal showers, baby showers, weddings, repasts. No event is too big or too small. You can book your next event by calling us at 609-965-4255 or email us at bookbeaconhall@gmail.com. That's BOOKBEACONHALL @gmail.com. Try Beacon Hall, where we turn moments into cherished memories.
Hey guys, thank you for being there. Welcome back to what's this program called again? In the Key of G with Bishop John Gandy. And I'm going to get that right, Kristen.
Amen.
And this is only the third program. But thank you for being there. Listen, if those of you on Facebook, if you would like and share and invite others to be on. If you have questions or comments, please feel free. And those of you listening by radio, the phone number is 609-641-8870 if you have a question or comment. With my guest, Dr. Arthur Garrison, and we are having I think, a very fruitful and insightful discussion about the upcoming election. During the break, we were talking about, I mentioned to you, you had mentioned in your previous commentary, you're talking about the difference between how African American church people may view Christian conservatism and how white evangelical Christians may view it, and how they mean different things. And also, I mentioned also that even Christianity is of how we see Christianity is different from how they may see Christianity. And also, although African Americans, for the most part, and oftentimes don't like to hear pastors talk about issues such as this. They see it as politics, and we have bought into the idea of separation between church and state. And of course, that's not a biblical concept, and neither is it a constitutional concept, but it's something that we have kind of bought into religiously. And for that reason, we tend not to hear the voice, opinions, and information coming from our pastors or our religious leaders, but we do hear religious perspectives, but it comes from people who are more likely to and feel more free to talk about it. And in many cases, they are white Christian brothers who we will tune into and listen to and get their opinion about and their view and perspective of Christianity, conservatism, and how we should think and how we should feel about policy issues and that kind of thing. And talk about that a little bit and what that means to us, how we may, is it the right thinking? Mm-hmm. How should we view it? How should we view it? And how do we navigate this and move forward and get this thinking right?
Well, a lot of things there. All right, first, small point first. Okay, separation of church and state. It's not in the text. And it's certainly not biblical. Where that came from, make long story short, is a letter that Jefferson sent to the Anti-Baptists, and make long story short, they said that there's a separation for church and state. And the point he was trying to make is that the government will not put its fingers in the policies and the debates of Christendom in his time, which was the various different Baptist sects. And so there's a separation between government power and church stance. And that's where that came from, and that's blown up into a whole other thing, and that's a conversation for another day. Mm-hmm. The difference between us and our white Christian brothers, I think, is this. White social conservative evangelical Christians, white social conservative / concept all by itself, separate that from evangelical Christian. One of the differences between us is that they think those two are the same, and they see it as the same. We don't. We know there's a difference between Christianity and the story of Christianity and the promises of Christianity and the ethics of Christianity and politics. we know they're two different things, and one doesn't have to bleed to another. And one of the differences is in mega churches, in white evangelical mega churches, they have no problem talking about politics and saying that Christianity drives their politics. They have no problem with that. That's one of the anchors of the Trump victory in 16. That's how it happened. And that's what he's counting on in 2024.
Take away the evangelical base.
Yes.
He has nothing.
A major moral strength voting bloc is gone. But as far as our faith is concerned, we don't mix our faith with our politics because we know they're different. Now, because also we have a history. We know the curse of Ham isn't a thing in Christianity. They only got convinced that it's not a thing in 1980 and 1990. Up until then, they were still believing in the curse of Ham. So we know.
Do they believe it, or do they use it because they thought we didn't know any better?
Oh no, they totally believed it. Definitely in the 1800s.
In 1800s, sure.
Definitely, they believed it in the 1900s. They began to say, well, maybe it's not biblical by the time we get to the 1960s, 70s.
Wow.
And then the last two churches began to abandon it late 1980s, 1990s. So the Mormons were the last ones to abandon it, right? The Quakers and the Puritans never bought into it. And that's one of the reasons when we look at our Christian history, those two groups were allied groups and they're part of the Underground Railroad and that whole kind of thing. But I think we all should look at this, the way we look at everything else, through our Christian biblical lens, no doubt about it. But we also offer in the debate, there's a difference between the Christian lens and how we want our politics to look on the national level.
So with that in mind, and how do we now speak to Christians, our listeners, our viewers, who are hopefully thinking about, how they're going to vote? Some of them are, again, perhaps struggling with voting for a candidate who may be too liberal in some of the perceived areas of ethics and morals.
Yes.
And I get it, because
Yes.
I'm in agreement with most of those positions, of course.
Yes, there are issues.
Yeah, there are our issues. And so how do you justify voting for a candidate who has that position, as opposed to voting for a candidate who may have more conservative positions in some of those areas, but they've got some other problems what's our interest?
I think our interest is this. What kind of government and what kind of society do you want writ large? Not policy specific. I look at it this way. If Lincoln had lost, nothing else in their political debate would have mattered.
That's a good point.
Okay. In 1860, if Lincoln would have lost, all the other things that they were arguing about politically would have meant nothing, because
correct.
America would have disappeared. In 1864, same thing. I think this election is about what we say our America is. Let's put it this way. If you don't like Harris, position she's taken, if she wins, we can fix whatever we don't like through normal political thing. We can fix what we don't like,
Or live through it.
or live through it if necessary. Okay, Trump will fundamentally change what we think America is. Project 2025 is a thing. Now it's 600 and change pages. It was an interesting read, but it does want to fundamentally change. Because think of it this way, another way. If Trump and the Republican viewpoint, if you take that into 1860, who are they voting for? If you take Trump's and social conservative arguments about the role of the federal government, if you put them in 1865, who do they vote for? Because they're not voting for Lincoln. And the United States wouldn't exist.
So you're suggesting that African American, so we should, not only do we have interests as it pertains to our faith and
Well, what kind
morals,
of country we want?
right? So we have another
Yes.
interest. Take
Yeah,
that away. We're back to
yes.
Jim Crowism,
Yeah,
Jim Crow looking America.
Because here it is. The theory that social conservatives push, especially states' rights theory. Now, those of us who are old enough live through to know. The young ones we have to teach, and that's a whole other conversation about what we teach our kids. But leaving that aside for a moment, the point is that if these social conservatives won in 1860, 1865, America's not here.
Right.
If they won in 1960 and 1964, which means Kennedy and Johnson didn't win, there's no guarantee that we're not sitting in the back of the bus, because sitting in the back of the bus was a century long before it got defeated. Mm-hmm. So it's not like there was something magical about 1964 compared to now, 50-something years. Their theory does not support the expanding of America that includes us. It was the liberal end. Even Gingrich, in a moment of honesty in 1994, said that the Republicans could learn what the liberal Democrats did in ending Jim Crow and segregation. Even Gingrich, in a moment of honesty, admitted that social conservative theory has no answer for expanding rights for minorities. It doesn't. Mm-hmm. The theory doesn't go for that. The theory says, okay, at best, let the states figure it out. The national government should have no role. Yeah, that also means that the little girls don't go to the high school.
Yeah.
That also means that we are still in the back of the bus. That means that we don't vote. Because the national government is the one that made the states include us. The national government making the states include us is from the liberal end of the political spectrum, not the conservative end of the political spectrum. So if you look at minorities today, however you define that, that's a different conversation. But the bottom line is, it's the national government that protects minority rights in American history. Whether it should be that way, fine, go have that argument. But it is that way. The national government is the one that protects rights of minorities, not the states. Correct. As a historical matter.
Absolutely.
And if you look at how the red states reacted to Obama winning, you remember that voter fraud is not a thing until Obama wins.
How about that?
It's not a thing.
That's right.
It becomes a thing when Obama won, and it definitely became a thing after Trump lost.
Right.
Okay, now then, just walk yourself through the conclusion of what that means, and that might help.
And for those of us who struggle with this, being able to conceive this notion that America could look very Jim Crowish, let's look at Project 25 and see how Project 25 and some of the things that it would do. Education, it would dismantle the
Department of Education,
right? That means that no longer are you guaranteed to have equal education. You're not getting it now, but no longer are there it's federal government there to ensure that you have schools in your community, that you've got adequate, education being delivered. So that goes away. What other? Talk about Project 2025 and how that is the vehicle through which we can be delivered
Yes.
back into an era and a time that looks very Jim Crowish, because that's a hard concept for many of us to because many of us, although I didn't live through Jim Crow, and certainly my children and grands and so forth. So we have a lot of young people, a lot of people in our community who haven't lived through it, and for them it's such a foreign idea. It's only 50, 60 years ago.
It's not so right. And now, I mean, internal family discussion. Black people have dropped the ball.
Yes.
Internal family discussion, which is what in this radio show. We have dropped the ball because our kids don't have a grasp of American history and our history in American history, and that's our fault. Mm-hmm. because you can't leave that to the educational system. So our kids not grasping there's a difference between 2024 and 1964 and 1954, and then they don't grasp the significance of it, and that's one reason they don't vote or whatever else. That's our fault. But leaving that aside, let's go back to Project 2025. If you read now, it's 600 and change pages. It's a thing to read. But overall, it comes out.
Did you read it?
Yes.
Okay.
It came out of the Heritage Foundation. Our Heritage Foundation writes these reports every time they think a Republican could win. Mm-hmm. The last time they wrote a report and really made a difference was 1980 when Reagan came in. And basically, the Heritage Foundation is the chief think tank of white social conservative worldview. And so they write this thing saying, that the next conservative president should do this, and it's a whole book, and they go through every department that exists, and how the federal government basically should shrink and send things back to the states, so on and so on and so forth. Okay. This one in 2025 does the same thing, but it reflects a different worldview that the national government per se is detriment to freedom. That's the theme going through all of it. It's definitely against abortion, get that. It's definitely against homosexuality, get that. But it's against the federal government having strength to function. Now that's the point I want you to hold on to. You could read the thing and get into the details, but it wants to shrink the federal government to function. All right, fine. Take that theory. Where do we end up in 1964 if the federal government is weak? Where do we end up 1954 if the federal government is weak? Eisenhower doesn't send the army to the Little Rock Nine. Okay? Kennedy does not send the U.S. Marshals to help Meredith. Okay? Lincoln does not tell the southern states, no, you're not going anywhere. You're not breaking up the country over slavery. What happened even go before that? No, the federal government says no. The slavery you can keep in the South, but it's not going into the not going into the Western territories. A weak federal government. Where does that leave us historically in the American story? That will give you context, because that's what they want in 2024. They want a weak, ineffectual federal government that cannot protect minority rights. Now, that doesn't mean we're going back to the bus, but I'm just saying, where do we fit when the federal government is weak and can't do anything? Where do the minorities now today, the social political minorities today, fit when the federal government can't protect them? Well, if you want to know, go look at what the red states are doing in voting after Trump lost. Because that's what's waiting for us if Trump wins and Project 2025 comes into existence. And that whole thing about Trump saying, I'm not into Project 2025, yeah, I know he didn't read it because he doesn't read. But his people read, and the people that are coming in, they're not going to be like 16 where Trump wins and he was surprised and he's caught blindsided and he never got his footing in turning the
coming in with
upside
the guns
down.
loaded.
Yes. This time around, they're coming in with people that know what they're doing, with a particular plan, and with Trump has experience. This time around, he's not going to be sloppy. And so he will make stuff stick that for whatever reason he couldn't make stick before, because he'll hire the right people. Remember, the whole reason January 6th went the way it did is because Pence said no, because the legal administrator, the general counsel and the attorney general said, no, we ain't doing it. Trump learned from his mistake. Trump didn't get away with his stuff because he didn't have the right people in the right places to do his bidding on command. This time around, he's not making that mistake again. It's not so much this election is about Trump. This election is about who he's going to bring with him. Right. And this time around, he's not going to be sloppy.
Yeah. And I want to stress this point, because this is not about, for me, it's not about partisan politics. To me,
this election is not about partisan politics.
This is not partisan. This is something else.
Something else.
And because there are a lot of our viewers are Republicans, and that's fine. And I say to people, I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative, just make sure you get this one right. You got to get this particular this particular election. You must get it right. I think it trumps all of those other designations or descriptions of who we are, or beliefs who we are. There's something that's more urgent, I think, that we have to give consideration to as it pertains to our interests. And of course, our interest serves the interest of America. So it's not like we are. It's not like we are. We are trying to exclude ourselves from the American society and American dream. We're trying to be included. We just don't want to be.
You look at our history from wherever you want to date it. African Americans, slaves, freedmen, Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, all the way today. Obama, Harris, all of us. Black people are totally into America. We're drilled right into the roots of the thing, and we want what is best for America. But you see, we bring a historical context to our politics. I explain to my students one of the differences between African Americans and white Americans is they see all issues contemporaneously. They don't see with a historical context. Mm-hmm. African Americans see everything with a historical context. Mm-hmm. So when we look at something, we reach back to 1619 and come forward. We reach back to 1865 and come forward. We come back to 1965 and forward. So there's a context to whatever this contemporaneous policy is. Mm-hmm. They are contemporaneous. They don't have a sense of history the way we do. But I understand that because our history, we were not Americans until 68. If you want to look at the clock, from 68 forward, right? There's issues with saying that that everything was hunky dory after 68. I'm not trying to make that argument, but let's just say that's the dividing line between before and after Jim Crow, 1968 with the Housing Act. Okay, but if you back up, we're talking 200 years where we were not part of this system. Now we are part of this system. Even Trump, in a moment of honesty, said that American democracy and slavery happened in the same summer, 1619. Even Trump said it in a moment of honesty. And he said that African Americans, even though they were abused and did not have the rights that they should have had, they fought and died and helped build this country in a moment of honesty. He said it that one speech, and he's never said it since. But the point is, that's our story. We have a historical context to contemporary political arguments. They tend not to have a historical context to a contemporary argument. That's why sometimes we talk right past each other.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. How do we now speak to our white Christian brothers, and not only that, how our Christian brothers who may be African Americans, who may see things from a different lens, very more conservative lens or a more liberal lens? How do we have this discussion, and is it possible to bridge that chasm that exists in this election between us? Is it possible to have a conversation that kind of bridges the gap and helps us to see things in a way that in the same way, with the same end in mind?
Some maybe, some not. Some maybe, some not. I see when I talk about American politics and everything else, I talk about it from a historical context. So if I'm talking to somebody who is particularly upset about this particular policy or that particular policy, and they have a particular viewpoint, I might be able to find common ground because we said, okay, well, let's look at our history. Now look at it from a total historical lens of 200 years. Now let's look at this. But I'm also worried that American politics is devolving, and it's devolving to a point where maybe we may not be able to come back. I have to admit, I'm worried about that because there is also such a hate in our politics. Up until Trump, a Republican and a Democrat could disagree and then go have a steak and be happy. Something happened with Trump that there is a hate that now separates Democrats from Republicans and liberals from conservatives. It started with Trump. But here's the thing with history. It started with Trump, but the context is the reaction to Obama.
Yes. Well, I'm going to take a break, but I want to come back. I want you to think about this. How does America look? Because you said that America possibly is going into a direction where there's no return. How does America look if Trump should win And how does America look if Harris should win? Think about those two scenarios. We're going to come back. My guest is Dr. Arthur Garrison, and you're listening to In the Key of G with Bishop John Gandy. We're going to take a 2-minute break. Hang in there. Be right back.
Deacon William Hawks, aka El Presidente, cordially invites you to attend the Elaine Lady Praise Hawks 60th birthday gospel music celebration service with special guests and artists Priscilla Hawks, First Lady Patricia Gandy, gospel duo Duncan and Rochelle with United Gospel Singers, the new John Howard Gospel Caravans featuring Bishop Charles R. Lyles, Minister Thomas Jennings, and the Inspirational Choral Ensemble, Friends of WEHA Anniversary Singers, directed by Pastor Bubby Fan, and other special tributes. Praise and worship by Abundant Life New Vision Praise Team, hosted by Thelma Witherspoon and Minister John Howard, all taking place Saturday, October 12th at Faith Baptist Church, 829 Tilton Road, Pleasantville, New Jersey. Doors open at 4 p.m. for pictures with Lady Praise. Program starts at 5 p.m. Admission is free. There will be a free will birthday love offering. Come celebrate Elaine Lady Praise Hawks at her 60th birthday gospel music celebration service.
Hawks Janitorial Contractors Corp. was established in 1987 by husband and wife team William and Elaine Hawks. Our motto is a great job at a fair price. The Hawks team is skillful, customer-focused, delivering quality janitorial services that meet and exceed our clients' specific needs. Hawks Janitorial Contractors Corp., proud sponsors of Gospel 88.7 FM. For more information, 609-484-0452.
Deacon William Hawks, aka El Presidente, cordially invites you to attend the Elaine Lady Praise Hawks 60th birthday gospel music celebration service with special guests and artists Priscilla Hawks, First Lady Patricia Gandy, gospel duo Duncan and Rochelle with United Gospel Singers, the new John Howard Gospel Caravans featuring Bishop Charles R. Lyles, Minister Thomas Jennings, and the Inspirational Choral Ensemble, Friends of WEHA Anniversary Singers, directed by Pastor Bubby Fan, and other special tributes. Praise and worship by Abundant Life New Vision Praise Team, hosted by Thelma Witherspoon and Minister John Howard, all taking place Saturday, October 12th at Faith Baptist Church, 829 Tilton Road, Pleasantville, New Jersey. Doors open at 4 p.m. for pictures with Lady Praise. Program starts at 5 p.m. Admission is free. There will be a free will birthday love offering. Come celebrate Elaine Lady Praise Hawks at her 60th birthday gospel music celebration service.
And welcome back to In the Key of G with Bishop John Gandy. Listen, real quickly, if you appreciate this program and this radio station and this ministry, we need you to support the station with your prayers and also with your finances. And you may do that by writing it by check. Mail it to P.O. Box 1674, and that's Pleasantville. And all your donations, of course, are tax deductible. And also, you can give Cash App at $ We Have Gospel. And so we do need your support, and we thank you for your prayers and your financial support. All that you do support wonderfully, but we just need your continued support so we can continue to have information that's provided on these programs, and also the gospel being preached, and also great gospel music. So appreciate you. Thank you so much. All right. So my guest today is Dr. Arthur Garrison. He is an author, and he is a college professor at Kutztown University and a national speaker. And we are certainly happy to have you in. He's out of Philadelphia right now. He lives in Philadelphia. He's from Bronx, New York, but he lives in Philadelphia right now. That's it. Thank you, man. So I want you to I'm gonna give you a chance to talk about your books and how people can get your information. But before we do that, I wanted you to give two scenarios. One is, how does America look, the political landscape and whatever else, however else it may look. How does America look if Trump should win the presidency? How does it look should Harris win? Politically, what is the future of America in those two scenarios?
I think if Trump wins with the Senate and the House, America goes completely in a different direction, and I'm not quite sure where that ends up. If Trump wins and the Democrats hold the Senate and the House, you'll have stalemate and drama all over the place. Trump wins, drama all over the place. If Harris wins, we might reach stasis, where we might go back to normal political arguments. Because I think if Harris wins, the Republican Party will be forced to reassess, and maybe the Republican Party will set back to where it was pre-Obama.
Do you think that's where many Republicans really would like to be?
Because it would require, to be honest, it would probably require a small civil war inside of their party. Because here's the problem with how the party works. The party's driven by primaries, not by the Cheneys of the world and not by the Republican establishment. That's the first thing that Trump taught everybody. Primaries drive the game. Now, the way we've jerry-rigged all of our primaries in the states, if you're a Republican, you're in a Republican district, which means you don't have to work for a living to get the Republican nomination, and you'll beat any Democrat that shows up. So basically, you don't have to work. But you have to work real hard if you get primaried, and what you don't want is to be primaried. Trump instinctively understood that the Republicans in the House were lazy and didn't want to be primaried. So he said, I will own the primary voters and I own the Republicans in the House with it. It just comes with the prize. That's what happened. Our politics now is that it is primary driven. Structurally, the only way to break that is to break up the gerrymandered districts and create districts in which there is an equal number of Democrats, Republicans. So every 2 years, both parties have a chance in every district, which means our politics would reset to the middle. Now, if that's done, we get out of a whole lot of problems. Assuming that's not done because the Republicans don't want to do that, that's not done, our politics is going to be, it's not going to go back to pre-Obama, going back to the arguments of the Bushes and the Clintons and the Reagans. We're not, as much as those had their own problems, at least those were real policy debates, and you win and you lose. But there was no hate involved. The reaction to Obama and the rise of Trump unleashed a hate into our politics that I don't think was seen until from maybe the 1850s. And so I think we're in trouble no matter what happens. I think we're in more trouble if Trump wins than if Harris wins. And if that's the choice that I got, I'll take my chances with Harris and either live through whatever that brings or fix her policy errors.
Yeah.
Trump winning, there's no fixing where he takes us. And he would drill certain things into our politics that'll never come out. And then I don't know what this country looks like.
Yeah.
I think that's what this election is about. It's not about tax cuts and social policy and even the culture war topics. It's bigger than that. It's what this country is going to be.
And then finally, the unique interest of African Americans, whether you be Christian or non-Christian, is of great concern. It's been of great concern to all of us. And what are your thoughts on that? We got about 2 minutes, about 2 or 3 minutes.
As far as we're concerned, on one level, we're in God's hands, and we survived
much
worse.
Yes.
Okay, we'll put it that way. We've survived.
No, we didn't survive worse. Our ancestors did.
Yes.
We're not cut from the same cloth.
Okay, now that's a whole other conversation about whether we have the same backbone as our mothers and our grandmothers and our great grandmothers. You have to invite me back for that debate. But I love this country. And I was raised to love this country. And her flaws fully understood. I'm not going anywhere else. And so our Constitution is still the greatest document ever written as far as how you govern a society. I'm totally with all that, period, end of stop. But we could also wreck it because it's built on certain premises. And if we don't defend those premises, we get something else. Because a dictator can be elected into a democracy. Go ask the Germans, go ask the French, go ask the Italians, and go ask the Spanish from the last century. It can happen here, right? It's American ignorance that says it can't happen here.
I was just thinking, our greatest detriment right now is ignorance. People are ignorant, have no historical perspective, so they don't see the possibilities.
Yeah.
And the real possibilities and what that may look like. We have no concept because most people are just not informed.
Yeah, we can devolve. We're this is America, but we're still human beings.
Yeah.
We can devolve.
Yeah.
But so, as far as just a quick answer to your question, as far as our people are concerned, we are God's children, and so in the end, that's all that matters anyway. Push comes to shove. That's all that matters. But while we are here, we need to defend the principles and the history and the lessons that we've learned that makes America America.
My guest today is Dr. Arthur Garrison. He is a professor at Kutztown University, an author, and also he is a national speaker. And Dr. Garrison, I want to thank you for coming in, man. It's been a great, rich discussion, conversation. I wish we could do it again.
Invite me back.
Yeah, before the election, we got to do it again. And let our listeners and viewers know how they can get some of your material, your books.
Yes, you can reach me at drarthurgarrison.com on my webpage. And there I have my books. As I said, I have Lord Help My Unbelief, stories of how God answers prayers when we are afraid to have them, Chained to the System, the history and politics of black incarceration in America, Race and Criminal Justice History, Rhetoric, Politics, and Policy. And those three books, those flesh out a lot of what we've talked about today. You can find those on Amazon or anywhere you buy your books.
Good. I want you to get that in. But we have a couple minutes left. What else do you want to say about this upcoming election?
It's important. Do not slough it off. It's important. As I tell my students, go register to vote. On voting day, go into that booth and press the buttons. Our people suffered and died so we could vote, if for no other reason to honor our fathers and our mothers and our grandfathers and our great-grandfathers who gave us the right to vote in peace. We have to vote. Period. For our people, it's a moral issue. Who you vote for is a different debate. You have to vote to honor those who couldn't vote before.
Yeah. Bonnie Davis says, Dr. Garrison, I'll remember him. He gave us rich information regarding the state of this election. Absolutely. And, people are certainly appreciative of the information that was shared today. And if you appreciate the information and this station having this station, this venue, to be able to have these kinds of conversations in this context, support this radio station. And we asked you can support it by mailing your check to 1674 P.O. Box 1674, Pleasantville, New Jersey. And what's the zip? 08232 is the zip code. And also through Cash App at $WEHA, We Have Gospel. And you can donate in those two ways. And we appreciate your support. All of your support. Judy Walton says, good conversation. Thanks, Mr. again. But yes, God bless you. Thank you for being there. Thank all of you for being there. We appreciate you. And don't forget, our regular program airs on Thursdays, every third Thursday of the month. But between now and November 7th, the election will be here every Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. Today was a special program on this Friday, but our normal day is on Thursdays. We thank you for being there. Appreciate you. And look forward to seeing you on next week. All right? God bless you. Have a great night.
Gospel